Imagine you're a musician trying to pioneer a brand new sound.
Right.
But instead of performing on a brightly lit stage in some packed stadium, you are playing in the pitch dark.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you've pulled a cap down over your face to completely hide your identity from your own neighbors. And as you play, you're blowing these thick clouds of cigarette smoke into the air around you.
Like a smokescreen.
Literally, you're trying to create a physical shield to ward off evil spirits.
I mean, it sounds like a scene from a Gothic novel, honestly. But that was the very real, very stigmatized birth with the musical movement in 1920s Lagos.
Exactly. And welcome to another custom deep dive. Today, we are tracking the true, incredibly complex indigenous DNA of today's massive global Afrobeats phenomenon.
It is a massive phenomenon.
It totally is. And to do this, we are pulling from a really incredible stack of sources for you today. We've got the Nigerian Music Digital Archive, historical discogs, vinyl records, documentaries on Jamaican dancehall, and even some recent pop culture news involving Grammy winner Burna Boy.
It's a really wide net.
It is, because, in a previous deep dive, we traced Afrobeats back to highlife music, which was huge in the Southeast, around ABBA and, of course, the legendary Fela Kuti.
Right, which is where most people start the story.
But, as our sources point out, that is really only a fraction of the story. Think about your smartphone for a second. Highlife and Afrobeat, they might be the sleek, colorful apps on your home screen.
The ones everybody clicks on.
Exactly. But underneath those flashy icons running quietly in the background is the operating system. And to understand that operating system, we have to travel to the predominantly Yoruba-speaking southwestern part of Nigeria.
Yeah, because Nigeria's cultural and ethnic landscape is just incredibly diverse. You can't get the whole picture from just one region.
Right.
The true rhythmic bedrock, the actual OS running today's chart-topping hits, was built on genres like Juju, Apala, and specifically Fuji music.
So to understand how we get to, sold-out arenas today, we have to start at a motor mechanic workshop in the 1920s.
Yes, specifically in the Oluwagbo area of Lagos.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So Juju music wasn't born in some pristine recording studio. It was born out of pure necessity. You had these groups of young men, locally known as area boys.
Okay.
And they're hanging out at Till Nelson's motor mechanic workshop. They're unwinding, having a drink, and just piecing together a sound from the wildly diverse cultures colliding in that specific neighborhood.
The sources describe it as this fascinating cultural gumbo.
That's exactly what it was. First, you had a very strong Christian community there. So you have these church hymns acting as a structural baseline.
Like standard choir music.
Yeah, they rely on diatonic scales, basically your standard, predictable de-re-mi Western musical scales. But then you introduce this completely different rhythmic element.
The Brazilian influence, right?
Exactly. Emancipated slaves were returning to Nigeria from Brazil, and they brought back the traditions of the Karada masquerade.
Which introduces the samba drum. So you've got the uplifting, structured harmonies of a church hymn, but underneath it, you are layering this driving, steady, two-beat pulse of Brazilian samba.
You're starting to build the engine right there. But the real catalyst, the spark, was the Liberian crew sailors.
Wait, Liberian sailors?
Yeah. They would dock in Lagos and mingle in the Oluwagbo area. And they played folk songs on the guitar, but they didn't strum chords like you typically see.
Oh, interesting.
They used this highly specific two-finger plucking technique they called cruise bass.
So instead of a flat strum, they're picking individual strings to create this bouncing, alternating bass line.
Exactly, and that bass line interacts directly with that heavy samba drum beat. It changed everything. The area boys just absorbed this technique instantly.
And there was one pioneer in particular, right? Tunde King.
Yes, Tunde King. He took that cruise bass plucking style and used it to create the foundational guitar tuning progression for this whole emerging sound. And he gave it a rather incredible name.
Oh, I love this part.
He called it Johnny Walker is a Mighty Man.
That is just brilliant. But I want to pause and push back on something here. The name of the genre itself, Juju, isn't that a colonial term, used by outsiders to describe traditional African magic or spiritual practices?
It absolutely is.
So how does a colonial term for magic become the name of a mechanic shop music genre?
It's tied to a very unexpected instrument that the Salvation Army introduced.
The tambourine, right?
Yeah, the tambourine. Locally in Lagos, they called it the Eight Corners. In these early informal gatherings, the musicians would shake and strike the tambourine with such relentless intensity that it actually mimicked the tonal cadence of human speech.
And a percussion instrument mimicking speech is a crucial concept here, especially for the Yoruba language.
Right, because Yoruba is highly tonal. The pitch you speak at literally changes the meaning of the word.
Exactly.
And because this intense rhythmic shaking resonated so deeply, people believed it elevated your mental and spiritual awareness. It put the player and the listener into this borderline trance.
So people started adopting that colonial term, juju, to describe the mesmerizing, almost magical effect the music had on the crowd.
Precisely. But despite that hypnotic power, the musicians themselves were treated as total outcasts.
Which brings us back to that striking image of Tunde King from the intro.
Right. Traditional Yoruba society at the time just did not consider being a musician a respectable profession.
So he literally performed with his face covered by a cap just to maintain anonymity and not bring shame to his family.
The stigma was immense, and it birthed this really eerie nocturnal subculture. Early juju was primarily performed late at night.
And in traditional Yoruba belief systems, the nighttime was a period of deep uncertainty, right? It was the domain of spirits and witches.
Exactly. Respectable citizens were indoors behind shuttered windows.
So the musicians are out in the dark, enveloped in these superstitions, blowing cigarette smoke around themselves to create a physical barrier against the night spirits.
It's a powerful image.
Oh.
But juju didn't stay in the shadows forever. It eventually crept into the mainstream.
The wealthy elites realized how infectious it was.
Yeah, they began hiring these bands for their massive, hours-long celebrations like weddings and naming ceremonies.
And over the decades, guitars were electrified, bands expanded, and legendary artists like King Sunny Ade completely transformed juju into this massive, stadium-filling party music.
He took it from the mechanic shop to the elite palaces.
Okay, so juju conquers the elite party scene, but that creates a vacuum, doesn't it? What about the working-class neighborhoods that weren't invited to those wealthy weddings?
That's a great question.
What about the early mornings? Because looking at the history of the 1960s, that void is exactly what birthed Fuji music.
Yes, and it starts with a deeply functional purpose within the Islamic communities of southwestern Nigeria, a genre called were, or ajisari.
Okay, what is were?
It was this highly improvisational, vocal-heavy music with one very specific utility. During the holy month of Ramadan, musicians would walk through the neighborhoods before dawn, chanting and singing to wake up fasting Muslims so they could eat their pre-dawn meal.
Wait, so the sole purpose of this music was just to act as an alarm clock?
Basically, yeah.
That is incredible. It's like taking a neighborhood alarm clock and turning it into a stadium packing genre. How do you even scale a utility like that?
You need a visionary. And that was Sikiru Ayinde Barrister. In the late 1960s, he took the raw energy of that were wake-up call and aggressively modernized it.
What has he changed?
Well, he stripped away the Western guitars entirely. Instead, he layered in the complex polyrhythms of another traditional genre called Apala.
And for you listening, a polyrhythm is essentially playing conflicting time signatures at the exact same time. Like, one drum is playing a steady 4-beat pattern, while another drum is playing a 3-beat pattern right over the top of it.
It creates this driving tension because your brain is constantly trying to resolve the groove. It just forces you to move.
Right.
And Barrister anchored these polyrhythms with massive arrays of percussion, particularly the dundun.
The traditional talking drum.
Exactly. You squeeze the leather tension cords on the outside of the drum while you strike it, which tightens the drum head and changes the pitch.
So a skilled player can literally make the drum speak Yoruba phrases.
Add in highly energetic call and response vocals, and Barrister had created an entirely new sound.
And he named it Fuji, but not based on a Yoruba word.
Oh, this is so funny. He literally named it after seeing a travel poster at an airport for Mount Fuji in Japan.
Really?
Yeah, he just liked the sound of the word and felt it symbolized reaching the highest peak of music.
That is such a brilliant, audacious artist move.
Right, so Fuji becomes the gritty, high-energy voice of the Nigerian streets. But simultaneously, as we move into the 1970s and 80s, Lagos is transforming into a magnet for global musical cross-pollination.
So how did local Nigerian sounds start bleeding into international pop, and vice versa?
Well, you see Western rock and funk artists flocking to Nigeria. I mean, Paul McCartney recorded Band on the Run in Lagos.
Oh, wow.
But look closer at someone like Ginger Baker, the drummer for the British rock band Cream. He didn't just visit, he integrated. He started playing with local Afrofunk bands like BLO and Menomino.
And this is where the mechanics of fusion get really interesting. You have Ginger Baker, known for this heavy, aggressive rock kick drum style, trying to mesh with the intricate, layered polyrhythms of Nigerian percussion.
It challenged both sides to adapt. Baker even backed the Lishadu sisters, who were these pioneering Afrobeat twins mixing jazz, reggae, and pop.
But this flowed in both directions, right? What about Eddie Grant?
Oh, Eddie Grant had immense subtle influence. He opens Coach House Studios in London, and that effectively becomes the post-production hub for a huge wave of 80s Nigerian pop.
He was fully immersed. He even sang his hit Say I Love You flawlessly in Yoruba. And he wrote Fire in Soweto, a major anti-apartheid anthem for the Nigerian artist Sunny Okasun.
Right, and you also had Roy Ayers collaborating with Fela Kuti on Music of Many Colors. Just this brilliant fusion of jazz, funk, and Afrobeat.
To me, this era proves that music is just a constant global conversation. Look at Bongo's Ikwu fusing soul and folk with high life in Benue State. Everyone was borrowing from everyone.
The exchange was constant. As Fuji is solidifying its hold in Nigeria, we actually have to look across the Atlantic to understand the next major ingredient.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. Because I'm looking at our sources, and we suddenly pivot to Jamaican dancehall.
We do.
If we are tracking the DNA of modern Nigerian Afrobeats, why are we taking a flight to Kingston, Jamaica?
It feels like a jump, I know. But sonically and socially, it's a direct parallel evolution. As Nigerian music was evolving in the late 70s and 80s, Jamaica is giving birth to dancehall out of the roots reggae movement.
Okay.
And just as Fuji spoke directly to the gritty realities of the Nigerian inner cities, dancehall was the unapologetic voice of the urban working class in Kingston.
So it's a shared ethos of the streets.
Exactly, a shared ethos that quickly evolved into shared sonic DNA. Dancehall moved away from the gentle, live band sound of roots reggae and embraced aggressive digital instrumentation. They relied heavily on sound systems and rhythms.
Right, rhythms. If you grew up listening to the radio or going to clubs in the 90s and 2000s, you have absolutely heard a dancehall rhythm, even if you didn't know the term.
Sure.
A rhythm is essentially a pre-recorded, looped instrumental track, like the famous Slang Tang rhythm, which was literally just a preset bass line from a digital Casio keyboard.
But the beauty of a rhythm is that any DJ or singer could jump on that exact same instrumental and toast or rap over it in Jamaican patois. It completely democratized the music.
It did, but we also have to acknowledge that dancehall faced intense backlash.
It did. It was heavily criticized for slackness, which means sexually explicit lyrics. There are also deep controversies regarding homophobia in early lyrics by artists like Juju and Apala, and it's frequently associated with crime.
And we should pause here to be really careful and objective because we want to impartially report what the sources say without taking sides. One of the university theses in our stack explicitly examines this connection between dancehall and crime in Jamaica.
Yes, it does.
And it concludes there's a stark lack of empirical evidence tying the music directly to driving homicide rates. It suggests that the violence is much better understood through historical and economic lenses rather than just blaming the music.
That nuance is really vital. But whether it was criticized or celebrated, the sheer sonic force of dancehall, the aggressive digital bass, the rhythm culture, the vocal delivery, it bled heavily into Nigerian airwaves.
So it becomes a major influence.
Massive. It became the secondary pillar alongside Fuji for the Nigerian urban fusion era in the 1990s.
Which brings us to the ultimate fusion. We are in the late 90s and early 2000s. You have the rapid-fire, complex percussion of Fuji, you have the booming digital bass lines of dancehall, and you have the encroaching global dominance of Western hip-hop.
And when those three forces crash into each other, you get the birth of the modern Afrobeats era.
And Fuji was the playbook for that, wasn't it?
It absolutely was. The older musicians didn't just isolate themselves. Fuji icons like Pasuma actively collaborated with the new wave of hip-hop acts like the Remedies. They showed the younger generation how to blend those indigenous melodies with Western song structures.
And the rappers really took that playbook and ran with it. Pioneers like Lord of Ajasa and later massive stars like Olamide created indigenous Yoruba rap.
Right. They weren't just rapping in Yoruba. They were literally taking the rhythmic cadence of Apala and Fuji, that fast, percussive vocal delivery designed to match the talking drum, and laying it over heavy hip-hop beats.
So Fuji didn't get replaced by modern Afrobeats, it became its heartbeat.
Exactly. Look at the subgenres dominating right now. Neo-Fuji, Fuji Piano, Fuji Fusion. Global stars like Asake and Seyi Vibez are topping charts, by taking the high-energy percussion of Fuji and layering it with the deep, hollow log drum bass lines of South African Amapiano.
It really is the operating system. And to ground this in the present day, we just have to look at the power dynamic of the artists today, like that recent news item in our sources about Burna Boy.
Right, the Instagram Live.
Yes. The Grammy-winning Afrobeats star Burna Boy jumps on Instagram Live to clear the air about rumors of an altercation involving DJ Tunez. He's clarifying that he acted alone, his crew wasn't involved, he gave the guy 2 slaps, whatever.
And setting aside the nature of the altercation itself, just look at the historical contrast. It is staggering.
It's a complete inversion of power. Think back to Tunde King in the 1920s.
Hiding his face in the dark.
Exactly. The pioneer of Juju was so marginalized that he had to pull a cap over his face. Society held all the power over the music. Today, Burna Boy doesn't hide. He broadcasts his face globally, instantly controlling his own narrative to millions of fans.
The artists carrying that Yoruba musical DNA are unapologetic global icons now. The music dictates the culture to society.
It's just an incredible winding journey. I mean, we started with Liberian sailors plucking 2-finger bass lines and Brazilian emancipated slaves playing samba drums in 1920s Lagos.
Then through a Ramadan wake-up call in the 1960s.
Right. Through the London studios of Eddie Grant, the sound systems of Jamaican dancehall, all culminating in the global juggernaut that is Afrobeats today.
It really shows that innovation is never a solitary act. It is this constant process of layering and fearless reinvention.
Absolutely. So for you listening, the next time you open a playlist on your smartphone, the next time you hear those driving, infectious Afrobeats rhythms, we hope you listen just a little differently.
Yeah, listen past the flashy production.
Listen for the ghost of the samba drum. Listen for the echo of that were wake-up call and the tonal cadence of the talking drum.
Because that is the operating system running the world's dance floors.
Yeah.
And it leaves you with something really fascinating to ponder.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if a highly localized improvisational chant meant to wake up fasting neighbors in 1960s Legos can evolve into a multi-billion-dollar genre that sells out Madison Square Garden today. What incredibly niche underground sound is quietly incubating in a neighborhood right now, completely ignored by the mainstream, that will absolutely dominate the global charts 30 years from now.
Wow. Somewhere out there in the dark, the new operating system is being coded. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, I see the light creeping in. Night is gone now, a new day to begin. She tell me she want more of my loving. I tell her I got that stuff that she wanted. Sunrise, sunrise, burning in my eyes. Sunrise, sunrise, with you I wanna rise. Sunrise, sunrise, burning in my eyes. Sunrise, sunrise, with you I wanna rise. We've been up all night, chasing dreams, living in the moment like it always seems. She tell me she want more of my love. I tell her I got stuff for she